she is none other than Dr. Somia Iqtidar. She has joined us yet again, and thank you so much, Dr. Saiba, for joining us today. And she'll be talking on a very crucial issue, which is statin therapy and the effect of statin therapy in primary prevention of cardiovascular outcomes. So, before handing it over to Dr. Somia, I would like to introduce her and present a small introduction of Dr. Somia Iqtidar. Dr. Somia Iqtidar has completed her bachelor's in medicine and surgery in the year 2004. She also did her post-graduation in internal medicine in the year 2010. She is currently the consultant physician at King Edward's Medical University, Lahore, and she is also the associate professor of medicine at the same university. Her affiliations are with the Pakistan Society of Internal Medicine as a general secretary. Her field of interest includes research, and she has numerous publications to her name. She has contributed to Kumar and Clark textbook of medicine. Her areas of interest include diabetes mellitus, hypertension, nutrition, and infectious diseases. She is an adept orator and a presenter, and she has delivered numerous lectures and papers on national and international forums. We welcome you today, Dr. Somia Iqtidar, and thank you once again for joining us today. I'm sure this session is going to be extremely fruitful. Now I'd like to hand it over to Dr. Somia Iqtidar to formally start the session. Dr. Somia, over to you. I'm sharing the rights of the presentation with you so that you can share the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hira, for a very kind introduction, and thank you, Salvi Saab. Appreciate. It's especially a problem in lower and middle income countries because the cardiovascular mortality rates, both age-adjusted and aging of these populations, are contributing to the rapid increase in the cardiovascular mortality. There was a large worldwide study that was done and it was published in the effects of potentially modifiable risk factor associated with myocardial infarction, which was conducted in about 52 countries, and it was called the INTER-HEART study. It was published in Lancet in 2004, and this showed that among all modifiable risk factors, the abnormal lipid levels were associated with the highest population attributable risk, which accounted for approximately 50% for the occurrence of myocardial infarction. So although the other risk factors are equally important, like diabetes, hypertension, smoking, tobacco intake, but the major attributable risk lies with these abnormal lipid levels. So looking at the Asia-Pacific burden of the disease and the challenges that we face, we all know that we live in a society where people are overweight and obese, and this has become a major public health concern. And despite the persisting levels of underweight in some countries, because we belong to a lower and middle income countries, the negative consequences of increased economic development, along with the overweight and obesity for health and economy, they are the major concerns for all of us. It is also predicted that in the next 20 years, unless and until we take drastic steps to change the scenario, this region of Asia-Pacific will be faced by a crippling epidemic of cardiovascular diseases, including heart disease and stroke, and this will match to a scale which is not previously known. So why the reason of cardiovascular burden is high in this region? We all know that in this part of the world, there is increase in the elderly population, and the rapidly increasing rate of overweight, obesity, hypertension, dyslipidemia, diabetes, and smoking, and more particularly in the urban areas, is contributing to this burden. So let's talk about what we are going to target today. And we will be target about some of the lipoproteins. We all know about different types of lipoproteins. There are low-density lipoproteins, very low-density lipoproteins, high-density lipoproteins. And these are actually cholesterol, and the low-density lipoprotein cholesterol has now largely replaced the total cholesterol as the primary lipid measurement for organ for the metabolism of all these cholesterol. The process of LDL formation begins when the liver cells, that is the intrahepatic cholesterol, either from gut absorption or from synthesis de novo, is repackaged by the liver into VLDL, that is very low density lipoproteins. Now the VLDL then enter the circulation and they are converted by the lipoprotein lipase enzyme and CATP into more cholesterol enriched species. First intermediate density lipoprotein and then low density lipoproteins. So the circulating LDL particles are able to penetrate the endothelium of arterial walls, where they become oxidized, and when they are oxidized, they promote inflammation and injury to the overlying endothelium and also to the surrounding smooth muscles. So these persistent elevations in the circulatory levels of LDL cholesterol is directly linked to the progression from early stage fatty streaks that we see in the vessels to advanced stage lipid-rich plaques. So that is why the LDL cholesterol is the major determinant of narrowing of your blood vessels, leading to increased cardiovascular risk. So, and there is a new perspective on LDL cholesterol or non-HDL cholesterol goals recently. The difficulty of giving up the treat to goal paradigm was deliberated extensively over a period of about 3 years, and many clinicians they use targets as like LDL cholesterol of less than 70 and LDL cholesterol of less than 100 for secondary and primary prevention of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease prevention. The use of LDL cholesterol targets actually may result in under-treatment with evidence-based statin therapy or over-treatment with non-statin drugs that have not been shown to reduce atherosclerotic HDL cholesterol. So implications of treating to an LDL cholesterol goal may mean that we are giving a suboptimal dose of statin because the goal has been achieved, or that adding a non-statin therapy to achieve a specific target results in down titration of the dose of statin because of the safety concerns of combining the two drugs. So we need to know what is the risk, and we estimate by risk by some tools. So which screening tests are recommended for the detection of cardiovascular risk, and what are the tools which measure it? So we all know that the low density protein cholesterols, they are used, estimated using the Fredwold equation. This is the equation in which the LDL cholesterol should be equal to total cholesterol minus HDL cholesterol minus triglycerides by 5. However, this method is valid only for values obtained during the fasting conditions and becomes increasingly inaccurate and invalid when either the triglyceride levels are greater than 200 milligrams and 400 milligrams respectively. So with the high triglyceride levels, this equation just fails to serve the purpose. Then the non-HDL cholesterol, that is the total cholesterol minus the HDL cholesterol, should be calculated to assist risk stratification in individuals who have moderately elevated triglycerides, that is about 200 to 500 milligrams per deciliter, and in addition, if they have diabetes or established atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So the TG levels should be part of routine screening in the lipids, and the moderate elevations of more than 150 may identify individuals at risk for the insulin resistance syndrome, because we all know that they are part of metabolic syndrome, and levels of more than 200 may identify individuals at substantially increased risk of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, and we have an evidence of grade B for this. So what are the lipid goals? These are all very complex mechanisms when we talk about it, but there are some things which are easy to remember, and we should know what are our goals and how do we achieve it. So there are some lipid goals which are set by the different authorities for the risk for atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. And the goal is to keep the total cholesterol less than 200. LDL cholesterol should be less than 70 in very high risk patients, less than 100 in moderate to high risk patients, and less than 130 in low risk patients. On the other hand, non-HDL cholesterol, 30 above LDL cholesterol level or 25 above LDL cholesterol level in extreme risk patients. Triglycerides should be less than 150, and ApoB proteins, which you usually do not measure, should be less than 90 at high-risk patients and those with diabetes, and less than 70 in patients with extreme risk. These are the guidelines what suggests. And how do we achieve these goals and reduce the risk? That is by the use of drugs which lower the levels of the cholesterol and that are statins. So the statins have been used for years for treating dyslipidemias, but they come with their own set of problems. People complain of myopathy. There is an association of new onset of diabetes mellitus with them. There have been few incidences reported of hemorrhagic stroke with them. So the side effect profile limits their use sometimes, but we have to know that what are the incidence and at what dose of statins these side effects they appear. So if you treat 10,000 patients with an effective regime for 5 years, which is considered to be atorvastatin about 40 milligrams per day, it can cause about 5 cases of myopathy. And out of these cases, only one might progress to severe condition of rhabdomyolysis in which you need to stop the statin therapy. But they also need 2 new cases of diabetes, like 50 to 100 cases in 10,000 patients in a period of 5 years, and 5 to 10 cases of relatively lesser common side effects, which is hemorrhagic stroke. So the safety of atorvastatin in Asian patients with clinical trials was studied, and a meta-analysis of 101 randomized controlled trials, which were carried out between 1992 to 2012, they were enrolled. In the inclusion criteria, they had 58 trials enrolled, at least one Asian patient, which had 6 long-term and 52 short-term trials. So the mean duration of long-term trial was about 3.1 to 4.9 years, while the short-term trials lasted for 4 to 72 weeks. So the adverse events were used by seeing the medical direct dictionary for regulatory activities, and serious adverse events were noted. And the endpoints that we studied was the cardiovascular events, incidence of adverse events, treatment-related, severe adverse events, treatment-related, and study discontinuation due to treatment-related adverse or serious adverse events. They were extracted from the database of all these 58 trials, and then this meta-analysis was run. So this showed that the incidence of all-cause adverse events and severe adverse events in Asian patients treated across the atorvastatin, that is 10 to 80 milligram dose range, was similar to or lower than the observed with other statins or placebo and in non-patient patients. And the Asian patients enrolled in short-term studies were less than 5% for both serious adverse events and discontinuations due to treatment-related adverse events or serious adverse events. The discontinuations due to treatment-related adverse events were infrequent, and there was no case of rhabdomyolysis observed in Asian patients, and the incidence of myalgia was 1.8% in the short-term studies and 6.7% in the long-term trials. So the key findings were that all-cause adverse events were experienced by about 35% of the Asian patients in the short-term trials treated with atorvastatin, which is any dose, but with dose-specific adverse event rates, which ranges from 28% with atorvastatin 10 milligram to about 46% when high-dose atorvastatin, that is 80 milligrams, was used. So higher proportions of patients experienced all-cause casualty adverse events and severe adverse events and discontinuation due to treatment-related events in the long-term trials. This may be due to the longer duration of exposure to the drug or combining the drug with the increased rigor of monitoring and reporting of adverse outcomes. So this study gives us an insight and a strong evidence to support the safety of conventional dosage, which we usually use, which is 10 to 40 milligrams of atorvastatin daily in our patients over the short and long term for intensive lipid lowering. And we need not to go on to very high dose of 80 milligrams of atorvastatin. These are some of the same things which I mentioned with you in the tabulated form, which shows that the serious adverse events were the dose related and they were more in the long-term events. So treatment-related serious side effects were rare among Asian patients receiving the statin, and in the short-term trials, the incidence of all-cause adverse events and serious adverse events in Asian patients treated with atorvastatin was similar 2 or lower than that observed with other statins or placebo. And discontinuations due to treatment-related adverse events were infrequent, which was about 2% across all doses. And these observations were later confirmed in the long-term trials too. So now the treatment decision flow for statin benefit group has been classified by American Heart Association and American Association of Cardiology. And it shows that ASCVD statin benefit groups in individuals who are not receiving cholesterol-lowering drug therapy and whose estimated 10-year ASCVD score every 4 to 6 years in individuals, and people who are 40 to 75 years without clinical ASCVD or diabetes and with low LDL cholesterol level, then you classify them on the basis of clinical atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. If they have the clinical atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, then you give them a high intensity statin if their age is less than 75 years, and a moderate intensity statin if he is not a candidate for a high statin intensity statin. The moderate intensity statin for more than 75 years of age, and a high intensity statin should be given in those patients who have clinical atherosclerotic vascular disease absent, but at the same time their LDL cholesterol is more than 190. Similarly, if the patients do not have diabetes and the estimated 10-year score is less, then you might have to reconsider your therapy. But if the patient has diabetes, then you need to put them into moderate intensity statin. And if their risk score is more than 7.5%, then you might need to put them on high intensity statin. So this is a simple flow. This looks complicated over here, but you have to give you a simple clue, then first look for the clinical evidence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. If it is present, obviously you have to start on high statin therapy in less than 75 and moderate intensity statin therapy in more than 75. But if there is no clinical evidence of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, you look for the LDL cholesterol levels. If LDL cholesterol levels are more than 190, then you start with the high intensity statin therapy. But if LDL cholesterol levels are less than 190, then you look for diabetes. If the patient is diabetic, then you start with a moderate intensity statin, or if the cardiovascular risk is more than 7.5, you start on high intensity statin. But if patient is neither have clinical atherosclerotic disease, their LDL is less than 190, they do not have diabetes, their estimated risk score is also less, then these patients, the statin therapy may be less clear of any benefit to these group of patients, and their case should be individualized treatment by the treating physician. So the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk calculators, जिसकी हम बार-बार बात कर रहे हैं कि risk कैसे calculate करना है, तो there are some parameters that give you an idea that what is the 10-year risk of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in that patient. And when I say atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, I mean non-fatal MI or death due to a heart disease or fatal or non-fatal stroke. So these are the patients who fall in ASCVD, and the risk, 10-year risk, is calculated by some of the units or categories. That is the total cholesterol which are taken in the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Previously, we were using the Framingham score, but the Framingham score did not take into This is a better score, ASCVD risk estimation score, which is widely available. You can download the app in your phone as well. There are ASCVD calculators. You just put in the values and it gives you a 10 years risk for that person. So group 1 are clinically atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease patients, like they have stroke or peripheral age is less than 75. You give them high intensity statin, but in recapitulation of whatever I told you in that big algorithm, it's just a breakup of this algorithm. See, we did this algorithm. I'm just giving you to give you a clear picture that clinically we see atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease है more than 75 है, तो you need to be cautious and you give moderate intensity. अगर नहीं है, अगर ASCVD का risk नहीं है, तो then you look for LDL cholesterol level. LDL cholesterol level अगर more than 190 है, तो you look for secondary causes of hyperlipidemia. And secondary causes of hyperlipidemia इनमें patients में आप high intensity statin और healthy lifestyle की advocacy करते हैं, but if patient is not tolerant to the high intensity statin, then we can give the high dose of moderate intensity statin in these patients. And then the third step, LDL देख पहले क्लिनिकली ASCVD देख ली, फिर आपने LDL देख लिया, उसके बाद थर्ड स्टेप पे आपने डायबिटीज देखनी है. सो अगर पेशेंट डायबिटिक है आपका, देन यू कैलकुलेट द स्कोर. अगर तो डायबिटिक है और उसका स्कोर ज्यादा है तो हाई इंटेंसिटी स्टैटिन्स दीजिए. अगर डायबिटिक है लेकिन उसका स्कोर जो है वो कम है, लेस देन 7.5 है, तो उसे मॉडरेट इंटेंसिटी स्टैटिन भी दे सकते हैं. अब हाई और मॉडरेट इंटेंसिटी स्टैटिन क्या है, ये भी आपको पता होना चाहिए जरूरी. जो हाई इंटेंसिटी स्टैटिन है, जिनसे हम कोशिश करते हैं कि दे आर गोइंग टू रिड्यूस द LDL कोलेस्ट्रॉल बाय अबाउट 50%, and moderate intensity are those which reduce the LDL cholesterol levels by 30 to 50%. So that's how we label them as high intensity statin and moderate intensity statin. अगर पेशेंट को डायबिटीज भी नहीं है, उसकी एज बिटवीन 40 to 75 है, उसकी LDL कोलेस्ट्रॉल लेस देन 190 है, एंड यू स्कोर आपका जो है वो लेस देन 5 आ रहा है, तो देन यू शुड reconsider adding this statin therapy to this patient and look for other factors that may be contributing to it. If the risk score is between 5 to 7.5, you start with the moderate intensity statin and you re-emphasize on the lifestyle habits, including your diet, your exercise, and control of other risk factors and active lifestyle. But if your risk score is high, which is more than 7.5%, then you initiate moderate to high intensity statin. And again, the emphasis should be on the change of lifestyle, which can lead to worsening of your lipid levels. So patients outside the 4 benefit groups, consider if they are outside these 4 groups, like they have elevated lifetime SCVD risk, LDL cholesterol is more than 160, family history of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is there, their C-reactive protein is high, or their ankle brachial index is less than 0.9, or they have a high calcium score on coronary artery scoring, or their carotid intima media thickness, which we sometimes use, which is not recommended, then you weigh on individual basis whether you should go for statin therapy or you should not go for statin therapy. So this has to be individualized, and statins can be considered for the patients with low ASCVD risk of less than 7.5 score based on additional factors. So if any of the additional factors are present, like family history, LDL cholesterol is between 160 to 190, C-reactive protein is high, less than 0.9 ankle brachial index, then individualize these patients and look at whether these patients will benefit from prescribing statins or you should hold them back for some time. So the benefit-risk balance of statin therapy actually depends upon atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk, and the risk you calculate by the calculator. And the relative risk reduction of these events with statins is proportional to directly your LDL cholesterol levels, and it is similar across all patient groups. And the risk of adverse events, which is for which the statins are notorious, is proportional to the intensity of the therapy. So we have to weigh versus risk versus benefit by gauging the ASCVD events and risk, and patients at higher risk obtain greater absolute reduction in ASCVD risk, and those with the lower risk obtain less absolute reduction in ASCVD risk. So just to summarize all of this for you, what are the guidelines and recommendations? So the recommendations for optimizing a statin safety is that you select appropriate statin, that is whether you need a high intensity statin or a moderate intensity statin, based on the patient's characteristic, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease risk, and also keeping in mind the possible adverse events that can be reported with the use of statins. Creatinine kinase usually भी हम measure नहीं करते हैं, except उन लोगों में जिनको increased risk हो adverse muscle events का, या जिनको muscle symptoms develop हो during treatment. In these patients, we go for the testing of creatinine kinase. If there are muscle symptoms, we discontinue the statin. If they are unexplained or severe, then we look for rhabdomyolysis. If they are mild to moderate, you evaluate the cause and reinstate the statin when appropriate. So you measure the baseline transaminase levels before initiating therapy with statin, because we all know that they are hepatotoxic. So you measure the hepatic friction if symptoms suggest hepatotoxicity during treatment. You would decrease the statin dose अगर आपकी 2 consecutive levels जो है LDL cholesterol के less than 40 milligrams per deciliter आए. So then you can decrease the dose of the statin therapy. And patients who develop diabetes during the course of treatment of dyslipidemia, which are on statins, then if diabetes develop, then you treat the diabetes in accordance with the guidelines and continue with the statin. You do not discontinue statins. The caution should be taken in patients who are more than 75 years of age and those who are on multiple medications, like they are having warfarin for some issue or cholesterol के लिए statin आपने शुरू की, diabetes और hypertension की दवाइयाँ भी वो already ले रहे हैं, उनको कोई GI में सब रहा है. जब हम multiple medications ले रहे होते हैं तो there are risks of drug to drug interaction. So in these patients, if they are especially of older age, more than 75 years, you should be very cautious in prescribing the drugs and keep a close follow-up in these patients. If patients develop confusional states or there is memory dysregulation, memory impairment, then you evaluate non-statin causes together with possible adverse effects of statins, and do not just attribute them to the use of statins, because there can be other causes, especially in the old age as well, like vascular dementia, etc. So patients with less than anticipated response, we need to reinforce the statin benefits, and we have to make sure that our patients are adherent to the treatment. So the adherent to the treatment is very important, because आपको पता है कि once our patients reach the targets or they feel, खुद ही रिपोर्ट पढ़ के वो assume कर लेते हैं that हमारे अब तो level ठीक है तो अब हमें दवाई बंद कर देनी चाहिए. So we need to address this issue as well, that they are taking their medication regularly, not missing their pills, and they are sticking to the lifestyle changes that you have advanced them, and this needs a continuous message being propagated to them on every follow-up visit to tell them to stick to their medication and to continue with their lifestyle changes that you have prescribed them. So if there is an anticipated therapeutic response, you check that if patient is on high intensity statin, then there should be a reduction in LDL by 50%. And if the patient is on moderate intensity statin, there should be a reduction in LDL by 30 to 50%. But if the response is less than the anticipated therapeutic response, then you see whether your patient is tolerant to statin therapy or not. If they are not tolerant to the statin therapy, then you manage the statin intolerance. If they are tolerating the therapy well, then you reinforce the medication adherence and you tell them to continue with their lifestyle changes, and then you exclude the other causes which can be contributing to hypercholesterolemia. And then you follow up them after every 4 to 12 weeks. But if the patient anticipated therapeutic response needs a reinforcement, then you can continue the adherence and follow up every 3 to 12 months. And on every follow-up visit, you need to reinforce the improved adherence response. Okay, so non-statin therapy. Non-statin therapy भी बहुत सारे clinicians use कर रहे होते हैं कि जी statin therapy में या तो insufficient response है या patients जो हैं उनको tolerability का issue है. So let's start with the non-statin therapy. So non-statin therapy is not recommended as a routine therapy, and benefit groups should receive maximum tolerated intensity of statin therapy where possible. And this should be in addition to the lifestyle changes, and it should be re-emphasized before you add on a therapy of non-statin drug for your patient's benefit. So if there is insufficient response to high intensity statin, that is the LDL reduction is less than 50%, then you re-emphasize number one on the adherence to healthy lifestyle and continuation of statin therapy, and consider an addition of non-statin cholesterol lowering drugs And especially the drugs which you are adding should be the ones who have shown to decrease the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in RCTs. And they should be added only if there is a benefit of ASCVD risk reduction and it outweighs the potential adverse effects. If there is insufficient response to moderate intensity statins, on the other hand, that is the LDL cholesterol reduction is less than 30%, then you re-emphasize same steps, enhance adherence to the healthy lifestyle and statin. And in these cases, since you are on moderate intensity statins, you can escalate your dose of statins by increasing the dose. And then again, you continue to tell them to change, to adopt to the lifestyle changes and continue taking their statins. And if still they are not being managed adequately, you can add on a non-statin cholesterol drug, and ideally those drugs should be considered who have a potential benefit of decreasing your ASCVD risk. If your patient is completely statin intolerant, there are some patients who continuously talk about severe myopathy and myalgias and are completely intolerant, or their transaminases level go up. So in those patients, you can consider non-statin as a monotherapy, but in all other cases, it should be an add-on therapy rather than a monotherapy. Okay, so the next question is, जो बहुत ज़्यादा लोग पूछते हैं कि जी जो LDL कोलेस्ट्रॉल है उसको कितना कम करना चाहिए statin therapy के ऊपर. So the current guidelines, they recommend an LDL cholesterol target of 70 milligrams per deciliter for patients who are at high or a very high risk, that is more than 7.5% ASCVD risk. And the risk imposed by LDL cholesterol is modulated by the presence of additional risk factors, as I told you in the beginning, age, smoking, and other indices of inflammation. But very low LDL cholesterol levels, lower than 70, are associated with a very low risk of cardiovascular disease. And low and very low LDL cholesterol levels are achievable with statin therapy. Here I am quoting one of the studies which was published in the current atherosclerosis report in 2014. This is a study of 6,000 around 6,107 consecutive patients who had LDL cholesterol levels of less than 60 during a mean follow-up of 2 to 1.4 years. Statin therapy was associated with improved survival in these patients, and lower mortality was found in patients who had extremely low of LDL cholesterol. So ये कि बहुत कम हो गया तो शायद नुकसानदेह होगा का concept गलत है. In this case, the lower the better works. So in a Korean acute myocardial infarction registry, which is known as CAMR, statin therapy improved clinical outcomes in acute MI patients with very low baseline LDL cholesterol of less than 70. So adverse events of very low LDL cholesterol levels in hypo-beta lipoproteinemia and A-beta lipoproteinemia are associated with intestinal fat malabsorption, hepatic steatosis, impaired transport of fat-soluble vitamins, peripheral neuropathies, acanthocytosis, mental retardation, and growth abnormalities. But for secondary prevention, achieving LDL cholesterol levels below 70 is beneficial and safe and is very cost effective. So for primary prevention, such therapy appears to be cost effective for those who have a 10-year cardiovascular risk of 5% or more. So the treatment has to be individualized. This is the lipid guidelines from European Association and American Association of Cardiology, and it shows you the CVD risk categories and LDL cholesterol treatment. That patients who are of extreme risk, उनका आपका जो treatment goal है उसमें LDL less than 55, HDL less than 80 और ApoB जो है वो less than 70 होनी चाहिए. जो patients आपके very high risk के हैं, so American College of Cardiology, they say that if there is an established recent hospitalization for heart event like ACS or coronary or peripheral vascular disease, and the 10-year risk is more than 20%, or if the patient is diabetic or there's kidney disease or any other risk factor, then these patients should have an LDL of less than 70 and a non-HDL of less than 100 and ApoB less than 80. In patients who are high risk, and high risk we call who have more than 2 risk factors, a 10-year risk of 10 to 20%, patients of diabetes, chronic kidney disease, familial hypercholesterolemia, all these patients are high risk patients. And the targets of LDL is less than 100, non-HDL is less than 130, and ApoB lipoprotein is less than 90. In the moderate risk, in which there are less than 2 risk factors and 10-year risk factors is less than 10%, you target for an LDL of less than 100, non-HDL total cholesterol of less than 130, and ApoB of less than 90. And in the no-risk patients, which are there, whose 10-year risk is between 1 to 5%, the targets are rather relaxed, and you can have LDL cholesterol of less than 130. Some associations say that it should be less than 115, and non-HDL should be less than 160. So the European Society of Cardiology, a very big name, and many people follow these guidelines. Their 2016 recommendations for lipid control show that in patients at very high cardiovascular risk, their LDL should be less than 70, or a reduction of at least 50% of the baseline that is recommended. So अब एक सवाल जो लोग और पूछते हैं कि जी less than 50% करना है या less than 70 करना है. So if your patient has a cholesterol of LDL cholesterol of suppose 200 और 50% पे वो 100 हो जाता है, तो क्या आपने 100 करना है या आपने 70 करना है? So the answer for this question is, question करने से पहले ही मैंने सोचा मैं आपको आंसर दे दूं, that lower the better. If it is your 50% is higher than more than 70 milligrams per deciliter, then go for a level of less than 70. In patients at high cardiovascular risk, not very high, high cardiovascular risk, you aim for an LDL cholesterol level of less than 100, or at least reduction of 50% from the baseline. And in the remaining patients, an LDL cholesterol of less than 115 milligrams per deciliter is acceptable. So these are all the possible intervention strategies. You know, lifestyle advice आपने जरूर देनी है, adherence to treatment जरूर बताना है, और उसके बाद statin therapy, and when do you need to add on a therapy that we have already discussed. So NICE versus European Society of Cardiology guidelines versus ACCA, American जो associations है उनकी guidelines को हम compare करें. So more or less message वही है, same है, that you calculate by looking at the LDL cholesterol level, the diabetes, and the risk of atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, and then you individualize your treatment. NICE says that for secondary prevention, you give 80 milligrams of atorvastatin. American Society say that high intensity therapy should only be given if patient is less than 75, and more than 75, you give a moderate statin. And European Society of Cardiology says that you decide on the level of LDL cholesterol, that it should be less than 70 or there should be more than 50% reduction. So with this, we come to the end, and the rest of the details of the atorvastatin product that the Pfizer has, I think the portfolio manager will give you a brief account of that. Thank you very much. मेरा एक मैसेज आप लोगों के लिए, सबके लिए यही है that whenever you come across any patient, be it of hypertension or diabetes or metabolic syndrome or obesity or dyslipidemia, treat these patients as a whole. Don't treat individual, यानी कि सिर्फ blood pressure का treatment कर लिया, बाकी risk factors को नहीं identify किया. Just look for the other causes which can contribute to the cardiovascular mortality, and treat a patient as a whole package. Look for the risk factors, identify those risk factors, set the goals, meet the targets, encourage the patients to adopt a healthy lifestyle in their diet, in their active routine, exercise, and incorporate a treatment regime in consultation with the patient. Convince them, because if patients are convinced, they tend to adhere to their treatment therapy, and this in return makes you achieve your goals of treating your patients and meeting your targets. So thank you very much for your active listening. I hope I was able to answer most of your questions, but if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them along. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Somya. I think it was a very, very enlightening session for all of us. Statin therapy, or when you talk about lipid management, is definitely a very critical issue for physicians when they are treating their patients. And I think this is definitely the need of the hour when we talk about lipid management and statin therapy. You have very adequately discussed all the adverse events that are associated with statin therapy, while at the same time, in the light of the ACC, AHA, and NICE guidelines, you have also defined how statin therapy should be administered. So thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I do have a few questions coming in. I think there's one question from Adil Nawaz. In patients 76 years and older who do not have any CVD risk factor, should we give modern statin therapy to or avoid starting statins in terms of risk development?
Thank you very much, Adil, for a very good question. I think I already told you that the first thing that you see is the ASCVD score. So if the patient's ASCVD score is very, very low, then you individualize the treatment depending upon the other risk factors. But if your ASCVD score is moderate to high, obviously then you need to start these patients on the treatment. If these patients have an LDL cholesterol of more than 190 or they are diabetic, you start with the moderate intensity statin therapy in these patients. Since in older age, we tend to avoid a high intensity therapy unless and until there is a very high ASCVD score.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Somya. Just to run through the instructions for Q&A once again, so that those who have joined us later would also know what options to use. You can post your question in the chat box, and you can also use the raised hand gesture for your questions. Acha, there are a couple of questions that I have separately as well that I would like to ask you, ma'am. Just give me a second. So, ma'am, there are certain international guidelines that are related to statins, like you've already discussed in the presentation, like NICE and AHA and ACC. Is there a one-size-fits-all situation when it comes to the kind of treatment that you should subject your patients to in Pakistan? Because most of the guidelines are international guidelines.
Okay, I think it's a very, very relevant question because whenever we talk about any guidelines, the most of the data that we have from European or Western or American population, and there are very few studies. If we talk about the Southeast Asian studies or Asia Pacific region studies, most of the studies are from either Japan or China. And the Southeast Asian, that is the subcontinent, which we call, that is India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, these are hardly enrolled in any trials of any of the studies. So I think it's of utmost important that we should have our local guidelines, because what we have observed in our clinical practice, and I'm sure everybody else over here will agree with me, that our patients do much better regarding statin therapy if they are given even in the moderate intensity. And we very infrequently, in patients with very high ASCVD risk or a frank heart disease, we need to go on the high intensity statins, and we usually do very well with moderate intensity. So I think our cutoff values should be different in prescribing the statin therapy from the rest of the world. But again, this needs a local evidence and a local published data from reputable researchers and published data. Only then we can support. So I would encourage, I see a lot of young physicians who have joined today's event to, start a campaign of making these national guidelines in the light of available data and doing some research work or clinical trials by comparing the moderate and the high intensity statin therapy in patients with dyslipidemia, comparing the results with the international guidelines, and then making our own guidelines. And I think it's going to be a wonderful idea if we have our national guidelines. But and at the same time, in the meantime, when we do not have local data, we tend to follow the data, and in the studies which I presented to you, we saw that there were a considerable number of Asian patients enrolled in that meta-analysis. And we saw that the incidence of side effects and tolerability were not that of much issue in patients of Asian population. So we can follow these guidelines for the time being.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. There's another question from Adil Nawaz. Is there any data or trial available which supports high dose statin therapy in primary prevention? And also, what is the statin of choice in patients with low EGFR?
Okay, so there is no role of very high intensity in primary prevention if the patient do not have a high ASCVD risk. If they do have a very high ASCVD risk, and I told you if they have a family history of ASCVD or if there are other risk factors which are contributing to ASCVD, then the treatment has to be individualized. But usually it is a moderate intensity statin that we start. The second question was in the renal safety. So atorvastatin is better and safer in patients with renal disease rather than rest of the statins.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, are there any dietary advices for dyslipidemia patients that you would like to give?
Of course, the diet remains the most important pillar for any treatment. Let it be diabetes or hypertension or dyslipidemia, the diet remains one of the key components that we need to address in the treatment. And in patients who are dyslipidemic, we all know that we need to tell them to avoid dairy products and polyunsaturated fats. And we need to cut down on the fat intake because all of this, and also we need to check their blood sugar levels because the higher the calorie intake, the higher the high glycemic food, higher the fatty food, this is all going to turn into cholesterol and deposit in their arteries. So I think the diet remains the main pillar and we need to individualize. Unfortunately, there are some things in the diet which we cannot eliminate, like in meat there is inborn cholesterol होती है, या जो हमारे जो डेयरी प्रोडक्ट्स हैं उनमें फैट का कंटेंट हाई होता है, एंड लो सैचुरेटेड मिल्क या लो फैट मिल्क या लो फैट योगर्ट या लो फैट चीज इज नॉट very readily available in our market, although it's available in the Western countries. So we need to tell our patients what are the food which are rich in fat content, and we need to avoid or eliminate them from our diet, and how to increase the fiber and good protein in our diet to compensate for the need, the caloric requirement of the patient. So I think it is as important as medication. The lifestyle changes and the dietary regimes that we follow are as important as taking medication for the treatment of dyslipidemia.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question is there any statin which is superior to other statins when starting a patient for the first time?
Well, this is a very tricky question because there have been a lot of studies on different statins, and I think all statins do reasonably well, but there are some studies in which rosuvastatin and atorvastatin has been labeled as better efficacy and better tolerated statins as compared to other statins like simvastatin.
In primary prevention, our main target should either be LDL-C reduction or it should be ASCVD risk reduction. What should it be?
I think the ASCVD risk reduction is directly proportional to your LDL reduction. So ASCVD reduction obviously has many factors involved in it. So you need to control your blood pressure, both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, because they are part of that. You need to control your waist circumference, your obesity. You need to control your lipid level. So it's all part of them. So the risk is definitely reduced if you control your LDL cholesterol levels. So I think they're interlinked with each other and both are important.
I think linked with this question, there's another question that in primary prevention, for how long statin should be taken, either for lifelong or when the ASCVD risk is considerably low.
I think this again has to be individualized. Usually तो जब ASCVD का risk है वो with age आपका बढ़ रहा होता है, and because with age the other comorbidities they enter in and increase your risk. So definitely you need to frequently review your decision of continuing with the statin therapy, and statin therapies they are usually considered for a longer duration of time. But if your ASCVD risk is very low, if it is less than 5% and there are no additional risk factors, that you need not to be on the statin therapy in those cases.
May I ask a question?
Ji Cheema Saab, Assalamu alaikum. Cheema Saab is our regular listener.
Thank you. Where should we add ezetimibe if it's needed?
As I told you, Cheema Saab, in the beginning as well, that statin remains the gold standard for treatment. But if your patient is either intolerant to the maximum dose of statin, or if you are unable to achieve your targets, that is, you are unable to achieve the 50% reduction in your LDL cholesterol levels or less than 70 milligrams LDL cholesterol level with the maximum dose of statin therapy tolerated by the patient, that is when the role of other therapies comes in. So it might be in the form of niacin or fibrates or ezetimibe or fish liver oil. The add-on therapies come after the statins fail to achieve your target or they become intolerant in the maximum provided dose.
Thank you. There are some recent reports, they have undermined this cholesterol levels. There are some rumors on social media. Is there any fact in this?
लेकिन सीमा साहब मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ वी आर अ नेशन ऑफ कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरीज किसी भी चीज के मुतालिक जो है ना वो अब आपने देखा ही है कि वैक्सीन के साथ बल्ब भी नहीं जल रहा और वैक्सीन भी नहीं चिपक रहा तो स्टैटिन्स के साथ भी यही स्टोरी थी दैट दिस इज होल drama and there is no role of statin therapy and this is all a game of the companies to mint money and there is absolutely no indication of statin therapy. But the scientific things, they go on the scientific evidence, and the scientific evidence is provided by the research and the publications that people do from all over the world to support that hypothesis. And we have a very, very rich data supporting the use of statins. And as I told you in the beginning in the study, which was a study carried out in 52 different countries, in which it showed that 50% of the attributable risk was by decreasing the LDL cholesterol levels, and this is the most contributing factors in decreasing your risk of ASCVD. So I think there is no life to that drama which was staged on the social media to discourage the use of statins in these patients, and there are very good drugs, and they definitely do reduce the risk of ASCVD and prolong life of the patient, and longevity of the patients has been documented by the use of statins in multiple trials. And they should be part of our daily regime treatment when we are treating dyslipidemias.
Some renowned cardiologists from America, they are advocating keto diet, which is mainly fats. What is your view?
देखिए मैं सारी जो डाइट्स जो अननेचुरल डाइट्स होती हैं इनको फैट डाइट्स कहती हूँ एंड दे कैन समटाइम्स मे डू मोर हार्म देन गुड दे माइट हेल्प यू रिड्यूस द वेट बट इन द लॉन्ग टर्म दे डिस्टर्ब योर मेटाबॉलिज्म and they're not beneficial. So हमेशा balanced diet with portion control and good physical activity is the regime to treat your obesity or overall problems. And with your question मुझे एक बात याद आई that we have Digestive Health Digestive Day on 29th of May और इस दफा की जो theme है वो है obesity the ongoing pandemic. So obesity and metabolic syndrome, you all know, are directly related to the dyslipidemia and atherogenesis and plaque formation in the vessels. So we should all work on propagating this message of reducing the weight and reducing the waste and circumference in our population, because this has a direct role on the atherosclerosis cardiovascular disease. And we should all advocate the use of healthy diet, and the diet should be in recommendation with a nutritionist or a medical specialist rather than a social media forum or a WhatsApp message telling you to eat this and lose weight in 10 days and carrot diet and cucumber diet and banana diet for losing weight and challenges, because they are not always scientifically backed by the data on which the medical science works in losing the weight, and they should be discouraged.
Because the keto diet has been found to be most effective in weight reduction in comparison to all other diets. Because those people who have done keto diet, they have reduced a lot of weight.
मैं आपको बताऊं, अपनी अगर नाम नहीं ले सकती, but I know quite a few people who have done keto diet and their kidneys, they went into a renal dysfunction because of high protein intake by these patients. So going to a keto diet it can be helpful in weight reduction, but it has to be supervised and monitored by a nutritionist. And it is not total elimination of other foods, but it has to be restricted fatty food in your intake, and glycemic index जिन foods का high है उनको restrict करें और portion control करें exercise के साथ. That is the best way to lose weight rather than a single track diet which can be harmful to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, there's another question. In Jupiter trial, higher CRP levels were associated with higher CVD risk. So should CRP level be routinely measured in primary prevention?
If you can hear her, go back to the slides. Can you go back to the slides?
Sure. Just a second, ma'am.
You will see जहाँ individualized treatment हमने बात की थी तो उसमें मैंने CRP थोड़ा सा आगे third fourth last slide हो गया third last slide there's a paper. So I did talk about that if CRP levels are more than 2, then you have to individualize the treatment because that is also a risk factor for atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. थोड़ा आगे another आगे. Okay, so just by answering you, the CRP levels are definitely, the CRP levels are markers of inflammation. And whenever there is atherosclerosis, there is inflammatory injury and oxidation. आपको पता है कि stress जो होता है, oxidative stress, उसकी वजह से आपके inflammatory markers जो हैं वो raise हो जाते हैं. और they are an indicator of atherosclerotic cardiovascular.
Can you change the slides, ma'am?
Yes, I can. See. So C-reactive protein of more than 2 milligrams per deciliter. In these patients, statins can be considered if a CVD risk is less than 75%, but C-reactive protein is high, or ankle brachial index is low, or there is high coronary artery calcium score. And then in these patients, we have to be individualized treatment. Discussion should be based on the benefits of giving a statin in these patients, and these patients actually might benefit from getting a statin therapy in the long term. I already mentioned it.
Okay, ma'am, there's another question. So there are a lot of questions coming in still, which is a good thing. Ma'am, since we were talking about, the different people using social media as a platform to sort of present the negative impact of statin therapy when it comes to patients who are facing cardiovascular risk associated with cholesterol or high cholesterol, or dyslipidemia. So there were a couple of adverse events that you mentioned while you were presenting. You were talking about, I think, myalgia, and then there were a couple of other risk factors that are associated with the use of. Yes. So in case of these adverse events, do you think it is advisable for people who have high triglyceride level or high cholesterol, or do you think that there's any alternate to the statin therapy in cases where patients are immunocompromised as a result of high triglyceride level or high cholesterol level? So is there an alternate to statin therapy where people are more prone to adverse events? Do you think there's an alternate to it, or how do you manage such patients where the likelihood of adverse event is more?
Yeah, this question was also answered in the presentation. Patients who are intolerant to statin therapy because of myalgias, myopathy, ideally, so if this is myositis, which is documented by a raised CPK levels of more than 5 to 10%, 5 to 10 times above the normal level, then you should stop the statin therapy. But those patients who have just myopathies, like they have myalgias or pains, and there's no documented CK levels, in these patients, you can reduce the dose of these patients. But if these patients develop severe symptoms, then you should stop and reinstitute, look for the other causes of myopathy. But if the patient is on high intensity statin therapy and their experience, you can switch to moderate intensity therapy. If still they are intolerant, because there are individual variations, then you can stop, look for the other causes of myopathy, rule them out, and then reinstitute statin and see the response of these patients. Patients who have hepatotoxicity. Hepatotoxicity is also a known case of statins. They can be monitored by using their transaminases level. There is new onset of diabetes mellitus type 2 also reported with these patients. So the authorities recommend that if a patient develops type 2 diabetes mellitus during the course of usage of statin therapy, then the treatment of diabetes mellitus should be started according to the guidelines, and statin therapy should be continued and not stopped. Those patients who are intolerant to side effects, they can be started with a low dose statin with an add-on additional therapy other than the non-statin therapy. But if they are completely intolerant to these patients, then statin therapy should be stopped, and they could be started on non-statin therapies for lowering the lipid levels.
I think, ma'am, we have reached the end of the session, but I think there's one question. I don't know how to answer this question myself, so I will just route it to you. Is there any role of statins in COVID-19?
अच्छा, statins का एक anti-inflammatory role भी है. So they have this anti-inflammatory role and they have been studied in many diseases, not only in COVID-19, but they have been studied in fatty liver disease as well. They have been studied in PCOS as well, and now they have been studied in COVID-19 as well. There are few studies, and I am part of one of the studies in which we are looking at the effect of high-dose statin, which is high-dose statin has an anti-inflammatory role in the COVID-19 in decreasing the incidence of progression of the severe disease. So statins are under trial, but they are again under trial and they have no documented role in the standard of care treatment in COVID-19. But they are under trials for treating as a potential anti-inflammatory in COVID-19 patients. And you can go to trials.com on Google and search for the trials in which patients are enrolled in the statin therapy in COVID-19 trials, and you can have a look at that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think this is about it. We have answered all the questions, and thank you so much for answering those questions adequately. I'm sure the audience, whatever questions they had, whatever queries they had, they have all been answered. And I would like to thank you once again for joining us here today. It has been a very, as expected, it was a great session as always. And thank you so much for accepting our invitation and taking out the time to share your views on this very important topic.